I'm Heather, and this is the Living with Addiction podcast, where I show you how you have more power than you realize when it comes to helping yourself and your child that's struggling with addiction. Hello, how's everybody doing today? I want to talk about control. And this is something that really I struggled with for a long time when my daughter's addiction first started, and it caused me so much pain trying to control her. And I think that most parents who are dealing with a child's addiction really struggle with this. Like giving up that sense of control over them really is very freeing. And control is just an attempt to create relief for yourself, but you're trying to create the relief outside of you. So it's very disempowering. And sometimes people comply with our demands. So we get a false sense of control. It's just an illusion when our kids decide, and it's just a decision on their part to do what we ask. We really don't have any control. They're just choosing to do what we have asked them to. So when you try to control your child, ultimately, you're only doing it so you can feel better. And it's a misguided attempt to provide relief from your pain. It's also a setup for a lot of resentment, because if the other person who won't let you control them and you don't see your side of it, then they're keeping you from feeling better. So now not only are they not acting right and not listening to you, but you believe that they're causing you emotional pain as well. And I went through that with my daughter. The more I grasped at trying to control her, the more I lost control of not only her, but myself. I totally lost myself in trying to control her and her addiction. And there's nothing wrong with having expectations of people. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just the emotional or the painful emotional attachment to the outcome that really causes a problem. So the more emotional your attachment to the outcome is, the more you will try to control the person, and the more pain you will have, the more you will cause your own pain. And, it causes a lot of pain to the person that you're trying to control as well. When I was trying to control my daughter, I wasn't just trying to control her drug-related behavior. I was also trying to control how she reacted to me and what she thought of me. And it took me a long time to figure out that I just could not control her. There was no way. She was 100% unwilling to be controlled. She had to show me over and over and over again. It had to get really painful. I had to really see that I couldn't control her before I tried to find another way. We had this huge power struggle for years, because until the addiction started, I thought I could control her. So I had this unintentional belief that I could control her. So, because I didn't really think about it as control before. I just thought of her as an easy kid. She never got in trouble. She always did what I asked her to. I totally trusted her. She was very mature and level-headed, basically a dream kid. So it gave me this false sense of control. So I was baffled for so long about why she wouldn't listen to me, why I couldn't control her. And let me tell you, when she started changing, the changes happened really fast, and she did a complete 180. And I was in constant fear about everything that could go wrong, and I was just so reactive to every situation. I could never get ahead of what was happening, and that was a big part of the problem for me. Like, why can't I get ahead of this? Why can't I stop it? I was wondering what it was in me, like why I was failing. It felt like a failure to me. And she was just changing faster than my brain could keep up with. Excuse me. And it took a long time for my brain to really be able to see the changes, for it to really sink in. I really saw everything that she did through the lens of who she had always been until the addiction started. But honestly, when I finally saw how much she had changed, when I stopped denying it, is the beginning of when I was able to start changing. Seeing the truth of the situation, that my daughter was in full blown addiction that was rapidly getting worse, was one of the catalysts that helped me realize that I had to change. So it was really painful realization to see how much she had changed, and that my sweet baby girl's life was being run by her addiction, and that, all bets were off. Nothing was like it was before. As I'm looking back now, I can see how important that realization was for me and how much it helped me to grow. My denial was keeping me as disempowered as my trying to control her was. And seeing the truth was the beginning of me learning to stop trying to control her and really to start focusing on myself. But before that, my expectation was basically do as I say, don't have an attitude about it, understand that I'm just trying to protect you and I need you to be okay with it, and act like you're okay with it so that I can feel better. But her reaction was, she'd go to great lengths not to be controlled. She'd just get pissed off that I was trying to control her. She'd have a bad attitude about it, of course. She wasn't okay with it. And she hated me for a while. It was just like the exact opposite of what I was trying to create. So, the more I tried to control her, the more things escalated, of course. She just started running away all the time eventually. Like that was her way of escaping my control. And when she was home, I was so full of fear that she was going to run away or that she was going to sneaking around, that I was just making myself crazy trying to control her even more. But I want to step back and dissect what's happening when you're trying to control somebody's actions and their reactions to you and their feelings, maybe to make it easier to understand why you're doing it and why it doesn't work. And one of the big things is the person that you're trying to control, so your child that you're trying to control, they end up with your emotional stability in their hands. So think about how powerful your child becomes in that situation. They have to do what you say, when you say, how you say it, and be okay with it and make you still feel loved and like a good parent, or you're stuck feeling awful. That's a lot of pressure on a person who's already struggling. Think about it. Your child is using drugs because of their inability to regulate their own emotions, and now they're in charge of yours too. I mean, that's just a lose-lose situation for everybody. It's exhausting. It takes so much scheming and planning and manipulating just to get the opposite results of what you're trying to get. I mean, it's a vicious cycle, but we keep doing it because we really just don't know what else to do. I had no idea how to create my own relief. And nobody ever teaches us to look inside of ourselves for relief. So we keep trying to do it by getting other people to change. I wanted my daughter to change and do what I told her to do because I thought if she did, I would get to feel like everything was going to be okay again. I would be able to breathe again. I would be able to, smile and be lighthearted again. and I could stop worrying about the future so much. She's not the one who changed first, though. I did. I had to take ownership of my part in the situation first. I saw something about that the other day that really touched my soul because I knew how powerful it was in the moment when I read it. And the funny thing is, I've listened to this book and read it several times, but I didn't remember this part. The book is called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And the book has nothing to do with addiction. It's about empowering yourself to achieve success in life, but it has this beautiful example about addiction in it. And the paragraph I'm going to share is actually a chapter about time. I was going back to read this chapter about time and just happened to run into this, and I couldn't believe I didn't have it underlined because I usually underline parts of books that really are important to me and stick out to me and that I want to go back and read those parts. But so this chapter was about time, and the author's talking about how the moment we claim ownership of a situation, we can create miracles. And so this is a passage from the book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And it starts off, if one of your children has a drug problem, you will experience more and more stress and conflict the longer you deny ownership of the problem. If you refuse to look at the problem, your denial will produce greater stress and conflict. If you look at the problem but transfer ownership by saying, this isn't my problem, this is my child's problem, you will experience more stress and conflict. Resolution of the problem will begin the moment you or the child claims ownership. It's important to note that one person usually claims ownership first. In my experience, it is rare for both people to step into responsibility at the same time. If you claim ownership first, full resolution won't occur until your child also claims ownership. When both of you decide to take ownership, as in, this is my problem and I'm committed to resolving it, you can work genuine miracles. And I think that that is such a beautiful passage because it's so important. And it was very clear to me when I read that the difference between parents who are resisting their child's addiction and fighting against it and parents who are calmly working with it. The difference between them is ownership. The parents who are calmly working with their child's addiction stopped seeing the addiction as their child's problem. They took ownership and focused on what they could change about themselves. And that's exactly what I did. I took full ownership of how I showed up mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of it. I took full ownership of my part. I totally started focusing on myself. No matter what my daughter was doing, I had to learn to be okay. I had to learn to breathe on my own, smile and feel lighthearted and have faith in my future and faith in her future. I had to learn how to manage my thoughts and feelings about having a child who was struggling with addiction and refusing to make changes. And as I talked about in the podcast last week, I had to learn to tolerate my discomfort and my pain about how she was choosing to live her life. I had to manage my thoughts and feelings by focusing on me and my life. I had to educate myself about addiction. I reached out to get support for me. I learned to set proper boundaries. And it took a lot of time and effort for me to figure that out. And I would have never put that time and effort in if I wasn't taking ownership And those skills serve me in every area of my life. I never have felt like, oh, this was a waste of time. I've only felt like, wow, I'm so glad I took ownership of this because it has helped my whole life, not just to do with her addiction. And those are skills that I probably would have never learned without that. So, I want to talk about that in that part of the passage I read where he talks about not receiving full resolution until your child takes ownership of the problem as well. And there's two parts of that I want to talk about. The first part is I want you to know that me taking ownership in her addiction gave me my life back. It wasn't just minor temporary relief. I still had struggles at times. As her addiction got worse, there were, like I had to build more skills and learn to tolerate more discomfort with her life and lifestyle. But I was able to live again. I started experiencing joy and happiness and hopes and dreams for my future again. I started creating a fulfilling life. So, taking that ownership was the beginning of me getting my life back from her addiction. And the other part is that now my daughter has accepted ownership of her addiction. She's sober. But if I had not taken ownership first and learned to focus on myself, I would not have the level of relief that I have right now. And there would be so much conflict within me. I would be, still trying to control her. I'd be trying to control her sobriety. I would think I knew best. I would think I knew exactly how she should do everything. I'd be judging her, wanting her to do things my way instead of being open-minded to her and then looking into myself for relief. So if you're trying to control your child, if you see yourself in what I've described today, please don't beat yourself up. You're doing the best you can in an incredibly difficult situation. Have compassion for yourself. You deserve it. This isn't easy. So don't beat yourself up. Just create awareness. You just want relief from your discomfort and from all the pain that you're in, and you don't know how to get it. Our kids don't come with an owner's manual and a chapter on what to do if they become addicted. It happens, you're in the middle of it, and you're just trying to figure out what to do as you go. And so you're just doing the best you can. Have compassion for yourself. And then just start asking yourself how you can provide your own relief, how you can look inside of yourself. Go read my blog. I have tons of posts in there full of ways to focus on yourself and provide your own relief. And finally, if you haven't yet, just consider taking ownership in finding resolution for your child's addiction. I think that ownership is where a lot of parents get stuck. They're, wanting to change. They're in so much pain. They're really struggling, but they aren't able to move out of where they are right now and where they want to be to where they're feeling like they have some sense of power and control in the situation, where they're acting from a confident, empowered place. And I think that taking ownership is a huge part of that ability to move forward. So just focus on what you can do for yourself, not to change them, but to change your approach and your acceptance. Just focus on you and how you can provide your own relief without needing them to change it all, without having to exert any external control. So that's all I have for you today about control. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to learn more about my work, go to heatherrosscoaching.com. If you want to help other parents who are struggling with a child's addiction, you can do it two different ways. First, you can share the podcast with them directly, or you can share it on your social media. Second, you can leave a review. Talk to you next week.